Hello and welcome everybody. This is Taco Movie Talks. I am here with Ethan, aka Film Junkie. We have slated for you a awesome episode. And just to kick things off, Ethan, how have you been lately? How have you enjoyed watching these really highly regarded David Lynch movies?
Um, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. David Lynch is one of my favorite filmmakers ever. He is like, it goes Tarantino, then Lynch. He's like right up there. Who knows? Maybe Lynch will, maybe one day pass Tarantino. I just think he is a kind of genius that will never be replicated in film or TV for that matter, because he did also make Twin Peaks, which is my favorite TV show of all time. So he's just a genius all around. And yeah, these two movies are a blast to talk about, especially one in particular. But we shall get into that when we get to that.
Yeah, he's so unique. He's very stylistic, and unlike really any director that I know, I mean, you can see shades of his styles in other people, but it's never. It doesn't seem like he's a carbon copy of anything. He is just so much himself. But one thing that, or two things that I wanted to bring up before we dive in is Ethan. He has his own YouTube channel. He has a couple short films on there that I think y'all would really enjoy watching. I think you should check out his channel not only for that, but because he has his own film analysis. And I have to say, Ethan, man, your intro video to Chinatown was beautifully edited. The audio is astounding. The thoughts, the takes, everything was just ultra impressive. And you're going to get to listen to him here. You're going to get to see his mind and his eye for film. And I'm telling you, I mean, you got to check out his content on his channel. It's really really good stuff, and man, I think you're taking it to the next level for sure. So everyone, be sure to like and subscribe to his stuff as well, because you're doing really good content for sure.
Very much appreciate that, man. Really means a lot.
Yeah. And I think it truly shows your talent and like how far you can take this down the line, you know, using all these skills you developed as a director, as an editor, as a writer, and being able to really break down a lot of things in Chinatown as far as the analysis goes, man. I mean, it made me want to watch it for sure, because I mean it is a highly lauded movie, but watching your
Oh yeah.
breakdown really made me want to dive into it as well. So that's a great video that you guys should check out, especially not only if you haven't seen the movie, but if you have seen the movie. I think it'll give you a new appreciation for it for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Part two is also on the way, so hopefully everybody can look out for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And his YouTube channel is going to be linked down in the description below. So you can look and just be able to one click get to his channel and start with either his short films or get right into the analysis if that suits you. But and one other thing, housekeeping wise, guest that has been on this channel, Matthew, aka War Champ, he had some medical issues and just wanted to say that, I'm thinking of you, and I'll link his letterbox down below. Reach out to him, leave him a comment. I'm sure that'll make him feel better, because he's an awesome guy, and I hope you are feeling better, Matthew.
Yeah.
On to David Lynch. What was the first movie that you watched of Lynch's, Ethan?
So the first movie I watched of his was Blue Velvet. Uh,
Okay.
well, like one of his masterpieces. Also, just when I first watched it, the direction I know, like it was the first time since Tarantino that I noticed the direction was just top notch creativity and top notch for a certain style that just cannot be replicated. I knew there was something special there.
Creativity, like you said, I don't know many people who you could put above Lynch as far as creativity. Everything he does, every choice is it's very calculated. I have to say, even when the movies don't land flush with me or I don't get it on the first watch, there's something that has to, it resonates with me, and it's that I respect how much thought went into all these teeny tiny details to where I think when you maybe watch it a few times or when it finally clicks with you, it becomes something that is just much more, what's the word for it? It makes you feel good being able to figure out and crack the code for his movies.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, we talked earlier that well, Lynch movies are like you can't watch them for a first time like once and like really get it, understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, just like it's rewatching it a second, third, fourth time because recently I rewatched Lost Highway, um, and I liked it more than I did. Like I feel like every single time I've rewatched a David Lynch movie, I liked it more than the first time. Especially with Mulholland Drive, I feel like if you were to watch it with a second time and take all the steps, I think you'll find something magical.
Yeah, and the there is this feeling while you're watching, like for example, the two movies we're gonna cover today, Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive, for the first time, where it almost feels like a roller coaster that's just out of control. You don't know which way it's gonna turn next, and you're just along for the
Yeah.
ride, trying to pick up as much as you possibly can. But wow, I mean, these movies, they are the type that literally will blow your mind in the sense that trying to figure it out, and when it comes to an end and you're just like you're trying to put the pieces together, and it's unlike 99% of cinema in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, and you had said your first Lynch experience, is that also your favorite Lynch movie? Do you lean more towards the, I guess I'm trying to think of the best word for it, the harder to grasp material, or do you like his more straightforward material more? What say you,
Mhm.
Ethan?
So, well, David Lynch for me is like a spectrum of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have his relatively normal movies like like a if you had a 1 through 10 graph and you split his career in half, you'd have 5 films in the 1 through 5 section being not really all that weird but kind of strange in their own ways, and then you have 6 through 10 which are absolutely bizarre. You have stuff like Inland Empire, Eraserhead, I feel like Lost Highway would fit in that camp. Dune, Mulholland Drive, and then the 1 through 5 corner, you have stuff like Blue Velvet and all the other ones. But Blue Velvet for the longest time was my favorite. There's just so little else like it. I think he's at his best when he's handling like these super this mixture of super light with super brutal, dark, heavy atmospheres. I
Mm-hmm.
just think that mixture is so incredible. Um, for me, it was for the longest time it was my favorite, even through the first watch of Mulholland Drive. But then I rewatched Mulholland Drive, and that has actually knocked it out of the top spot. And Mulholland Drive is now my favorite.
Wow. Yeah. So far, and I'm only on a first watch basis with well, these two and Eraserhead. Mulholland Drive has become my favorite of the trio, but all three are ultra creative. I think, I mean, surreal would that be a title that you would say aptly describes part of David Lynch's style?
Yeah, absolutely. A Lynchian surrealist horror.
Yeah. And not to get too ahead of myself, Inland Empire, it uses, I guess, all three. The type of horror that is introduced is so unique that it takes things that you wouldn't expect to be very scary, but like with Eraserhead, that almost feels like there's an existential doom that it makes you look at the insignificance of certain things, the pressure. It makes you feel like the main character, and like that type of horror I've rarely felt before. That it like
Yeah,
it lingers with you, and it's it's a feeling that is
yeah,
so dreadful. Like honestly,
yeah. I've always I've always said the scariest movie I've ever seen is Hereditary.
mm-hmm,
And that I guess it probably still is, but in terms of like what I want in a horror film, which is something generally creeping under my skin, no one does it better than David Lynch. Uh, yeah, Eraserhead is like the prime example of that because to me, it's something that you can't like. It's images that you can't even describe adequately. It's such a bizarre thing that you're looking at, and it's just like how bizarre it is that you can't understand it, and therefore you're even more terrified.
mm-hmm. And his style really, I think it lends to it almost, there's a bit of a misdirect because everything seems so out of place. Everything seems like you're in a different sphere. You're looking through a different lens, and then when the really horrifying material comes about, whether it be almost just atmospheric, whether it be like something coming at the screen, a la Inland Empire, or even maybe like a harsh kind of grounding of a story like Mulholland Drive, those unexpected twists and turns are weighted. It's like it takes the formula of what a jump scare is, but it crafts it in such a way that it doesn't feel cheap. It feels earned, and it's done in a very, very thoughtful and honestly kind of a brilliant way that it
Yeah.
works much more than just, you know, cue violin streak
Yeah.
and, like something jumping out of a corner.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we could talk about that in Mulholland Drive with it maybe, in my opinion, the greatest jump scare in all of movies.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's a great segue with Mulholland Drive. Ethan, would you like to just give a quick summation of plot, and then I say, let's start with the jump scare that you're talking about, because that is a tremendous scene.
Yes, of course. So Mulholland Drive is about a woman who survives a a limousine crash, and she suffers amnesia because of it. And she finds this uh, nice, very nice, sweet, young blonde actress, aspiring actress named oh oh no, what's her name?
Betty?
Jesus, Betty. Jesus, how did I forget her name? Uh, Blank. Jeez. She calls herself Rita, and they are going on a trek to find what her real identity is.
Yeah. And there is a scene which seems at the beginning to be unrelated, where this man is in a diner. He's explaining to a friend a dream that he's been having, and they kind of almost walk through step for step this dream,
Yeah.
and they turn a corner, and the jump scare that you were alluding to happens, and it builds and builds and builds this suspense to a fever pitch, and when it actually gets unveiled, I have to say it was not disappointing whatsoever. It
Oh,
really delivers this like almost demonic looking face that
yeah.
you kind of, with how it builds up, you almost suspect there to be nothing, and that is, just toying with your feelings. But for it to actually pull the trigger on what all the suspense is built up to, I think is almost what makes it so effective. Do you agree in that aspect, or do you think the makeup and everything was also partially or fully responsible?
I think what makes it so, yeah, I think it's the description of the dream word for word, and then when it starts to align, it becomes like heart sinking, like your
Mm,
heart starts to sink. All the music drops, everything drops to a dime as you see this guy just slowly walking down this wall to something that could pop out. You don't know what it's going to be. And it's almost like a bait and switch of H.P. Lovecraft, Lovecraftian horror of the fear of the unknown, where like he says it's a face so horrifying he can't even describe it, and when you see it, like you don't know what it's going to be.
mm.
So the image that you're creating in your head of what it's going to be is infinitely more scarier than what's about to pop out. And when you least expect it, wham, it pops out at you.
Exactly. That sinking feeling. I have to imagine David Lynch has a lot of personal experience with like this type of dread in his life to be able to capture it and put it into play in his movies, because he is able to execute it so well. Like on a whenever you can kind of generate these feelings from multiple people, that's when you were able to really hit the mark on something. And that sinking feeling that you described, I can almost go back to the place and feel it from when I watched it originally. Like it takes me
Yeah.
back just you describing that. And there's so much to that, and I'm glad that was added. But I feel like talking to you about this movie in particular, and definitely Inland Empire, is going to give me such a deeper understanding for it, because admittedly I feel like I was only able to scratch the surface of what David Lynch is trying to say and illustrate in these films.
Yeah. Forewarned, I have only seen Inland Empire once. It is kind of a heavy it's kind of a heavy movie to watch. It's 3 hours. It's um uh like super just avant-garde, like his most avant-garde to date. And it'll be a little harder to talk about that one, but I think I have enough to talk about it. So just a forewarning.
Absolutely. And I would imagine that we may have picked up on different things just because in in both of these movies I think there's a lot of things that are there to be picked up, and like just having a flashlight or spotlight rather shown on it, it might be like, oh, you know what, I didn't think about that, and that kind of ties into my theory and vice versa. But at the bottom line is a director like David Lynch makes talking about film fun. Like I love directors like him, and I think
Yeah.
he is a guy that I'm gonna definitely keep watching and investing in.
Oh yeah, totally.
But as far as Mulholland Drive, there is a huge distinction between the first two thirds and the last third of the movie, where we have the same actors and actresses from the beginning, and they are portrayed much differently, and I think there's even name changes in between. And the way that we get from one to another is quite unique. It comes with the opening of a box. And my question to you is, and I think I might have read, but I can't quite remember, was the box, was that, what was the box necessarily?
So the box is almost a portal to the real world. So
Okay.
this was it was kind of foreshadowed in Lynch's career with Lost Highway, where the movie just completely changes on you about halfway through. This movie, same thing. It completely changes on you. But there is a definite distinction between those two worlds. And I think that jump scare sequence is to signify that the difference between the dream world and the real world. Um, and when we open the box, it's basically us going into the portal of the real world where these real characters live.
Mm.
And I think it's almost like David Lynch has manipulated you. He's manipulated you into thinking that we are watching a standard mystery thriller by
Mm.
David Lynch, like a la Blue Velvet or Lost Highway. But what he did was he manipulated you. He transported you into the reality, which is the reality of Hollywood and the reality of the world as we know it. And I think that's like the key theme here in Mulholland Drive is manipulation.
I'm glad you brought up the kind of the description of the dream, is it does tie so deeply into how this film goes. Because like you said, we start out with almost kind of the imaginative illustration, the kind of hopeful depiction of what life would what Naomi Watts' character, I guess, wants life to be like. And then the last third we actually get the brutal reality of what has been going on. And
Yeah,
that twist is, I think you could argue, is one of the best twists in cinema history.
probably.
So the box, as you said, it has great significance. It kind of takes us through a portal to the real world, but the key that opens the box has kind of a real world counterpart, for lack of a better term, because a blue key has, it actually symbolizes something tangible in the movie,
Yeah, definitely.
and that is that Naomi Watts has Rita, I guess her girlfriend's, as killing, because Naomi Watts had paid to have that character killed. But it looking back at it and how the real world kind of slips into the dream world, I think that is also that attention to detail. It makes the last third pay off much, much more, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As far as you're concerned, there was, I think, major critiques being made on the cinema, I guess, landscape, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term. And what did you think about David Lynch's kind of critique on Hollywood in this movie?
Well, well, at first I thought, yeah, this is about the manipulation of Hollywood. You go in thinking about this, oh, this utopian society that all your dreams are going to come true. That's not the case. It's like quite drab and it's full of a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I guess I would say it's more criticism of the manipulation of everybody in the world and the corruption of the world
Mm-hmm.
around us in general. Hollywood is just used as the I wouldn't call scapegoat, but the example, the scenario, um, and yeah, it's just it's incredible just what he was able to do with it, and just if it, every time I watch this movie and I think about this movie, it feels like I'm staring into an abyss because there never really is an end to it.
Yeah, I think you can pull so many different threads, and it could take you to seeing something new in it for sure. And
Yeah,
I mean, all directors, I feel like, love to. It only makes sense to kind of write and illustrate things that you have like a deep understanding of, something that you can fully flesh out. And we see that in both Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, where David Lynch is clearly using his expertise, his knowledge of the film industry and film itself to, tell a tight story with lots of grand detail and kind of letting us in behind the scenes too, for lack of a better term. So that was really interesting, and kind of getting to see how, because it felt like producers having this huge influence on things was a big
yeah,
part, and kind of how the people in power have so much influence on the positions below them, and that is, seeped all over this film.
absolutely. And to piggyback off your point earlier, I think that's why it's important to. I think you uh, did it correctly, where to watch it first, knowing uh, basically nothing about it, like knowing the basic level details, and then just going in, not like analyzing anything, just getting a feel for everything
Mm-hmm.
is very important. Because if you were to tackle it a second time, I would recommend doing it with those 10 clues. Because I spent an entire day looking through those 10 clues and analyzing it, and I didn't get really like and I didn't get an ending, like a true ending, because I like I said, it's like an abyss. There really is no end in sight. It was more or less feeling the themes that I was able to come up with, which is how you feel manipulated and corrupted.
Yeah, and I think we could probably both agree on this, and that is that Hollywood or Los Angeles is kind of like a microcosm of the entire world, but just kind of turned up to 11. Just for the pure size, the kind of ambition of the people drawn there, to where it
Yeah.
feels like all these human conflicts are at an absolute high in Hollywood. But as you
Oh yeah.
said, that's prevalent everywhere. It just might
Yeah.
be easier to identify in Los Angeles than other places.
Absolutely.
I think this film is. I think David Lynch, maybe as a whole, is a bit intimidating for viewers. And while it's definitely
Yeah.
taken a long time for him to grow on me, I think I always enjoyed his films. I always respected them. And obviously, the ability to just think on very specific details and what he's trying to say, that is the rewarding aspect to a director like David Lynch.
Absolutely. I would probably recommend watching one of his more tame movies first before delving into all the really bizarre ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned your first was Eraserhead, and it's simple, but I don't know if it. I would recommend somebody like watch it first, if you know what I'm saying. I would say like Blue Velvet. I feel is the perfect place to start because it's such a perfect balance of that surrealist tone with the realistic brutality of it all.
Yeah. Like with Eraserhead, it has such a reputation that I think is important to know going in. That David Lynch is something that is not going to be immediately. I guess it's not something that you're going to be able to look at on the very surface of it and feel like you're kind of getting it, because I think
Yeah,
it's almost like he's speaking in a way that you have to translate.
yeah,
Realizing that is very important because, you know, Eraserhead is it goes deeper than what the film shows, I think. Everything
yeah.
is representative of something, and that I think is the case here in Mulholland Drive, like you said. But it literally, it took me, I had to read an article to kind of explain the transition from first two thirds to final third, to where it was like, okay, that makes all the sense in the world, where
Yeah.
I just needed the verbiage put in, on the table for me to be able to actually say, okay, this is the story as a whole. And it became much more rewarding after being able to kind of put it together that way.
Oh yeah, of course. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I spent like a full day trying to decipher those 10 clues. And it was draining, honestly. Like his like the story, like once you start to get it, the story just kind of wears on you because of the realistic brutality of it all.
If you don't mind me asking, what were some of the like biggest takeaways you got after your deep analysis of, the 10 clues?
To me, for me the biggest takeaway was not just like not just that theme of manipulation and that feeling of manipulation,
Mm-hmm.
but also uh like David Lynch created the perfect sort of satire of Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
while also showcasing that it is Los Angeles is used as a scapegoat of, oh, here's all the corruption in the world is in Los Angeles when it could be anywhere. But I also think it's kind of a love letter to Hollywood in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because you have like uh bright, bubbly Betty and the very misguided but also sweet Rita, and you have these characters that are so hopeful of Los Angeles, and it doesn't seem nearly as bad at points. And I think David Lynch has never stated that he's hated Hollywood. In fact, I think he's stated multiple times that he loved living. He's loved living there.
Hmm.
And I think it's a beautiful thing to criticize the city and the world that you live in while also giving it a little bit of praise and not just completely dogging on it.
Absolutely. And the love letter aspect, I think I would have to agree with you because, and I think he's also, you know, letting it be known his love of old Hollywood as well, because there seems to be a lot of acting that would be very prevalent in like the golden age of Hollywood. Even the names, like I remember when Naomi Watts' character Betty, I was like, that is not a name you hear very often anymore. It sounds like a an older actress's name, and then even Rita, kind of drawing inspiration on what her pseudonym should be, is based off of an older actress, and
Yeah,
I kind of thought that was like a really cool callback, and I think you're right. I think he was trying to give callbacks and pay homage to the golden age of Hollywood that I think has influenced him a great deal.
yeah.
What was your favorite part of this film?
Oh boy. That's really tough. Like the whole film is like a blend of like just really brilliantly creative styles, but if I had to pick one, it's that jump scare scene.
Mm,
It's just brilliant. That one scene, it's the one where I could pick it out as a singular. That is how you do filmmaking right there.
yeah, I thought that was absolutely outstanding. Um, and after the movie is finished, and like how you stated, it ties into the kind of greater plot as a whole. That makes that scene so much more substantial. Um, when I watched, kind of, and I think it's maybe one of the first scenes after the box is unlocked. That was such a cool scene because it starts to let you know it like that there is a tie in between what is the dream world and what is reality. For me, when I watched that, I was like, holy crap, like something is going on here, and like couldn't wait to get to the end to like try to put what David Lynch was, you know, building together. That was super awesome for me and created a completely unique cinematic experience. In a way, it's
Yeah.
kind of it's a little bit like Memento in that realizing how the timeline
Yeah.
and how things have been played with changed the whole narrative, and that you really can only piece this together looking at it as a whole. Like that type of cinematic experience is unmatched.
Yeah. Memento, another one of my favorite movies of all time.
Absolutely love Memento. Um, yeah, one of Nolan's best for sure. But any final thoughts on Mulholland Drive, Ethan?
It's like I have a top 10, a designated top 10, and Mulholland Drive's like number 11. It's really close to one of my favorites of all. It is one of my favorites of all time, but it's close to that, like that caliber.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like the litmus test where, if anything is going to become like one of your top 10 favorites, it has to at least beat Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, it's like a if it like even comes close to my top 10, then I would consider it even that I would consider a grand masterpiece of cinema.
So I feel like your rating is I would imagine a 5 on this one.
Yeah.
So mine so far is a 4, but I think
Hmm.
much like yourself, it is after a rewatch is, I think, something that is going to mature and definitely get higher after a rewatch. But even
Of course.
just talking about it and reading about it, it's something that it's gonna like. There's not enough said, and when I rate right after I watch a movie, and I might change that, but it's I mean I don't know about you, Ethan. It's hard to write a review when it's not really fresh in your mind. What is
Yeah.
your process? Do you like to write it immediately afterwards? Do you let it breathe for a little bit, or how do you?
Um, Depends on the film.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, last year I went to see T10 in the theater.
Okay.
Um, and I was just simply dumbfounded on what I just watched. I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." So it took me a while, but then I cobbled together some thoughts, and I realized that I did think it was really fantastic. Um, but if I really have nothing, I'll just write down a stupid sentence on when it comes to like letterbox or something.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to there are other movies where like I have so many thoughts that I could just write down like a full paragraph. And then there are movies like I recently just watched The Holy Mountain by
Mm.
Alejandro Jodorowsky, and that I have so much to talk about that I'm planning on actually making and writing a video about it. So yeah, like it definitely varies for each film, but like either I have no thoughts on it, or little to no thoughts on it, or I have so many thoughts that I am planning on creating more projects, which is really the beauty of film for me.
Yeah, the thought provocation is something that or provocation, I guess, is something that film I think is one of the top mediums as far as discussion. I think
Yeah.
TV for the accessibility of it, but I don't know how deep you can talk about certain TV shows.
Eh,
I think if they're very well done, there's a lot of television. But I mean, could you imagine doing a Malcolm in the Middle episode with me?
no. Yeah.
And that's what's great about like David Lynch. And you mentioned I myself I have Holy Mountain, you know, that's been on my watch list. I have it on one of my computers, and I have not watched a Hodorowski film yet. But you're a huge fan of Lynch, and I based off your exposure now to Hodorowski, is there any similarities between the two? Like, how would you best describe him? Is he is often described as a creative genius as well?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I was actually going to David Lynch. I think the closest director you could compare Lynch to is Hodorowski, just because of that weird, sort of visceral imagery. However, Lynch is more on. I think Hodorowski's imagery can get like borderline excessive and um, really over the top.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that regard, Hodorowski's a bit of a hit or miss for me. Either he can deliver absolute masterpiece, Holy Mountain, or he releases kind of more movies like The Dance of Reality or El Topo,
Mm-hmm.
which El Topo already gets like a couple points knocked off because of a certain controversy that happened. That's really bad that I don't want to discuss here.
Mm-hmm.
But he's kind of a maniac, and I think David Lynch is a sweetheart. But I think David Lynch is just he's a lot more self-contained in that weirdness. But yeah, but because of the visual imagery and how bizarre and indescribable it can be at times, that's the only director that I can kind of compare it to. But it's not really a good comparison either.
Yeah. And I know that they are very much tied together too in that David Lynch was able to make an adaptation of Dune, and I'm sure. Well, maybe you have heard or maybe not, but I
Yeah.
know Hodorowski, his magnum opus was to eventually make a Dune adaptation, and that
Yeah.
I think there's a whole documentary about it, and
Yep.
so kind of a neat little extra blurb about
Oh yeah.
Hodorowski. But
Yeah.
do you think that there is anything for fans looking to watch Holy Mountain that they should know going in, or do you think going in blind is perhaps the best way to enjoy that film?
I think the one thing I would say going in is that just get ready for it to be really weird and a little over the like even more bizarre than David Lynch at times, but in terms of imagery and not in terms of the atmosphere.
Okay.
Um, just be prepared for that. I don't want to say anything more because that would spoil it, but once you really delve into that weirdness, you get a lot of these really interesting themes and elements of symbolism, and just so many elements of storytelling are used for that movie, and it's brilliant.
Awesome. The next movie that we watched was Inland Empire by David Lynch, which came out 5 years after Mulholland Drive, and that was in the year of 2006. I'm going to do my best to explain the surface level plot, and then this one is an absolute mind melter. And we're going to do our best to kind of dive deep into this one, but holy hell, this one goes completely off the rails in
Hmm.
so many different ways. But we have Laura Dern, who is the lead actress in this. She is the main actress in a film that gets unveiled to be a it is Polish source material and is said to be a cursed movie that was, tried to be adapted before they were unable to. And we kind of have Laura Dern phasing through different realities, going into the past in certain ways, seeing herself, seeing her co star. There is conflict between the leading man and her husband, who seems to have strong ties within Hollywood. We then see I think, what was the cast of the Polish crew doing their movie, and there is also a woman who is kind of shrouded in mystery, who seems to be watching this all through the television in a hotel room, who is actually introduced at the very, very beginning of this movie. Is there any other plot points that you think are very that we should let the people listening know about the summation of this plot?
No, not that I recall. I'm just going to say though, forewarned that that one time that I saw Inland Empire was, I believe, about a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it it has stuck with me. A good portion of it has stuck with me, but you would have to remind me of a bit of things that happen in the movie. But other than that, there is still things that we can discuss.
Absolutely. So the kind of surface level interpretations that I was able to make was that there seems to be kind of three realities, for lack of a better term, that all converge through this film. Did you see that as well? Was that kind of the takeaway, or how you viewed the narrative of this movie?
Uh, no, I don't think so. But like, yeah, again, my memory's fuzzy, but yeah, I definitely feel like there is. I I was thinking two realities. Because there's one because I it has something to do with a guy who's called the Phantom, right?
Is that's not Laura Dern's husband, is it? Or
Is it? Shoot,
is that
I was
when they're doing
woefully
it?
unprepared for this.
No, 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 not at all. Because there's a lot, and I cannot stress this enough, Ethan. There was a lot that I did not fully understand about this. Was the Phantom kind of the person who made a noise while they were doing a table read near the beginning?
Yes, yes, and I think Laura Dern's character chases after that noise,
And
and it gets revealed that she walks into a. I think it's like she is walking into a different reality. Yeah,
yes,
and when we return to that, it's Laura Dern in a different reality, um, in that same room. That's in it within the different reality.
and that is who the Phantom is. Is her in that instance, correct?
So it might, yeah, I think it was her in that instance, or it could have been the Phantom in the same room. I don't know.
I mean,
Oh
it's a
no.
completely mind bending film, and for people
Yeah.
who watch this film multiple times, have a lot of different theories. I would love to hear them, Ethan. I'm sure you would love to hear them because there's probably so many different ways you can interpret this film.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
For see if I want to see if my explanation makes any sense as far as the three realities. I think it's almost like to give maybe like a comparison that is like easily digestible. You look at Ghost of Christmas Past, Future, and Present, where Laura Dern is present. That room that she goes into, it seems to have leading females as well, and I think that
Yeah.
is kind of a critique of how kind of women within the industry can be portrayed, and can kind of be used in a certain extent. Then we have
Yeah.
some times where we go way back, and it seems like we are getting to visit the people of the Polish film, which I felt like that in and of itself could just be a shared reality, but I feel like that is kind of its own, you know, parallel universe that influences the present. And then I think we get a future look, and that I thought was the woman in the hotel kind of watching everything unfold.
Yes. Yes. I remember the hotel room, and I remember the woman.
And I think, and I'm not sure how it quite applies to the Polish film, but there is something about, I think, how leading women can very much be kind of like used by the industry. Was that kind of something that you recall being a takeaway you came away or came out of this film with?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that, like that specific theme of abuse in the film industry, like um and like those sort of tragedies, how they're used as like um weird weird like conspiracy theories
Mm.
and urban legends, so to speak.
Yeah, because and this even goes
um
back. No, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, sorry. I wanted to mention one thing, and it's the atmosphere of this film. So I have a little bit of a reason as to why this film came to be. So David Lynch I think, recently got a DSLR digital camera, It might have been a DSLR, could have been something else. But it was a digital camera. It was his first digital camera, and so over the course of a number of like over a course of a period of time, this was just uh like a bunch of random pieces of filming that he would do on his digital camera, and he's able to cobble that together, and what became of that was Inland Empire. And so, but as a result, it's kind of a cheap digital camera. You get a lot of really fuzzy shots,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't like get a clear picture of everything. But another thing I wanted to point out is the editing, and this is the first time I've seen this really done by David Lynch, where it feels like the editing of conversations is so strange. Like there's a very long pause in between certain sentences,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it influences later short films like What Did Jack Do, and other films along those lines. So yeah, that's definitely one thing I wanted to mention is the atmosphere.
Yeah, like the long pauses and dialogue, it portrays like this kind of stilted acting that makes you really uncomfortable as a viewer, I
Yeah,
think. Uh,
yeah.
a lot of the horror aspects he uses, there's a scene where Laura Dern kind of runs at the camera. That was creepy
Oh,
as hell.
another phenomenal jump scare. Like she's slowly coming towards you, and you're like, "What is happening?" And then all of a sudden, it speeds up,
Yes.
and you don't expect it. That was brilliant. And also, like the scene where the Phantom turns into like a warped face version of Nikki. When I first saw that image, I saw it in my nightmares. I wasn't able to sleep.
That one was, yeah, probably the scariest David Lynchian scene or part
Yeah,
dropped into anything. That one, it was, there was just something so creepy about it. And I think that face it gets used from time to time in different mediums. They'll kind of borrow
yeah,
that because it is, there's something so unnatural and creepy that it's supremely effective for sure.
yeah. And also wanted to mention the rabbits. If you remember, there's
Yes, I
um
wanted to ask you about the rabbits because
yes,
I, I I'm not sure what was going on with that, especially while I was watching. I was like, this is very odd, and I'm not sure what is going on.
so this was a short film that Lynch released 4 years prior,
Okay.
2002, like a collection of short films called Rabbits, which you can now see on his YouTube channel, which is cool. But but randomly integrated into the film are the scenes with these rabbits. And it's just a family of stop motion humanoid rabbits that are like just chilling out and watching TV, while all other parts of the family are just doing stuff around this particularly interesting room. Um, Not particularly interesting. It's particularly uninteresting. In fact, it's just such a barren thing, and I don't know if it's like supposed to communicate anything, but what it made me feel like was a sense of um, just strange kind of comfort, but also strange relatability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like sitting down and watching, and like this movie is also like horrific and brutal, and sometimes families like sit down and watch that. So I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely gave me like this weird feeling, though.
Yeah, and I think there's also, and I wonder if maybe this was an added aspect. There is, I think, they're trying to illustrate a parasocial relationship that we feel with movie stars.
Oh
Did,
yeah.
did you get that I think from the girl in the hotel. And do you think that maybe that aligns with the bunnies at all?
Perhaps, like it has the idea of watching somebody in their
Mm-hmm.
lives, um, is definitely an interesting note. And obviously, like it slowly over the course of the film, the hotel room gets more and more integrated, but a lot of weird, messed up things happen around this hotel,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I'm right on that.
Yes.
And so it turns into a a parasocial relationship. And I want to go into criticism. I think from what I can remember, they were executed and put set up well, but in my opinion, there's a much better movie that deals with parasocial relationships with like celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
You probably heard of it. It's called Perfect Blue.
Oh
Um,
yes, I've heard of that, and it is high on my watch list. The animated
yeah,
film.
yeah, Satoshi Kon. It is a masterpiece that is able to communicate those themes that are still relevant to this day after 25 years. And I think that is genius. That's like 80 minutes of nuts to butts, like brutal animated filmmaking. I think Satoshi Kon is a legend. But I think Inland Empire could be communicating something similar, but I think it falls short in my opinion, just because of all. I think the horrific imagery gets in the way at points.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the things I remember the most about the film are the atmosphere. I don't remember anything about the story. I remember very little about the story and its themes and symbolism. So I think that speaks definitely about the film.
Absolutely. Um, that's always something where looking back at a film, what sticks with you is probably of utmost importance. The longevity, the the things that stick with you, because a lot of films I think we can look back, 5 years after watching them, and the things that stick with you are ultimately what are going to paint your appreciation for it, especially
Yeah,
really great films.
yeah,
I think there's so much to digest in with this film. There's so much that can be said, and in that aspect, I do very much respect it. But I do
yeah,
think, from you, like how you said, being able to look at this movie through the lens of time, and having seen it, a year ago, that
yeah.
that says a lot about when you put so much into a film, a lot of it can get lost in the sauce, for lack of a
Yeah,
better term.
yeah, absolutely.
Some things that I do want to touch on too, like as far as thematically goes, is I think, and this is even in the summation, I think off of Letterbox, if memory serves correct, is that Laura Dern, her character starts to become lost in her scenes. And I kind of feel like maybe that is a relationship that goes both ways with actors. And then there is also something kind of deeper in the way that we look at actresses as opposed to actors. So to just kind of give some further explanation, my thought process is that not only do actors kind of leave a piece of themselves in every performance, but that as viewers we feel like we're kind of owed that, and that we come away like feeling like we know them because of that blood, sweat, and tears and hours of training, work, etc. And then
Yeah,
the additional point is that the leading man is kind of, he is a hero in the eyes of his peers because he has relationship after relationship with, the actresses he works with. You kind of look at like a Leonardo DiCaprio type, like he is very much held up as like a shining example and almost respected for all the people that he dates, whereas actresses more often than not don't get that same kind of view through the eyes
Yeah.
of society or what have you. And I think Laura Dern, her internal feelings become very conflicted on this, because I think she had a real attachment, she really liked the leading man, but she looks at herself with disdain for having, had a relationship with him, despite the fact that he feels completely the opposite.
Yeah.
And
Um.
that critique is very
Oh.
powerful, I think.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. In terms of like getting lost in the performance, I want to also mention Laura Dern's performance. She's fantastic as always, but I think what makes her performance particularly stand out is the fact that she so much sells that idea. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like she almost becomes her character throughout the course of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one scene in particular at the beginning where she's doing a scene at a house, and what's crazy about it is that forgot she was playing a character, and she like really sells the acting
Mm-hmm.
aspect, like where you have to act inside of acting.
Yes.
Brilliant, brilliant. It sells that idea that they people will become lost in their performances.
Yeah. And I have to tell a story of a video I watched on YouTube of David Lynch promoting this as Laura Dern's
Yes.
greatest performance. He was in Hollywood, and
Yep.
I think a cow was with
Yes.
him, and he had a sign. I have to say, I can see why people love him so much, because that is just
Yep.
that is hilarious. It's effective, I also think, because
Yeah.
you're gonna tweet that, Facebook it, you're gonna tell all of your friends, I saw David Lynch with a cow, and he told me to go see this movie.
Yeah.
You're not gonna forget that anytime soon.
Yeah. What's funnier about it is the fact that so apparently David Lynch didn't have enough money for like actual funding, like
Okay.
for ads and like press. And so that's what he did. That's what he did to do he did his own promotional material with a giant poster and a cow. Which just makes it it's the reason David Lynch that is to me the reason David Lynch is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, because like there are filmmakers who have more films that I love like about as much as something like Blue Velvet,
Mm-hmm.
but David Lynch has able to like emotionally affect me, not with his films but also with his personality and his creativity, not only in film but in just the outside world. Like I watch his weather report is just so bizarre, and I just slowly but surely fell in love with that personality, and just that personality bleeds into his films, and I think that's why he's like a really close second to my favorite filmmaker of all time.
It's a sunny, clear sky, 76 degrees here in Los Angeles.
Yes. Yeah.
He is so
Beautiful.
lovable, like you said.
Yeah.
And how many directors would you think would do that for
Oh,
their actress, for their film? Would go sit on the corner of a popular street in Hollywood with a cow.
yeah, I don't know. I like there are so many auteur filmmakers that are pieces of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
I love Tarantino as a filmmaker, but as a person, he sucks.
Yeah.
Kubrick, he's one of my favorites. He sucks. Hitchcock sucks. I think most of my favorites are just assholes. Unfortunately, like they're assholes for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to get as much out of their actors as possible, so it's understandable,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still kind of scummy. And but David Lynch is one of the very few filmmakers he's an auteur, he's a legend, and yet he's one of the sweetest people that he's one of the sweetest directors that you'll ever like watch videos of and watch like people talk about him. Like there were four actresses on the same newspaper like talking about him and what they've meant to him, like what he has meant to them, and it's just incredible to see.
Yeah, it shows that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like the way like you said Kubrick or even Tarantino goes about doing something. Like you can come at it from the complete opposite side and still get these phenomenal performances and masterful art pieces.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention another example. Hodorowski himself. Man, uh, there like that controversy I talked about, like that. I have a genuine like I have a rule that I keep to myself
Mm-hmm.
where no matter how bad somebody is on the outside of film, I always have to separate the art from the artist.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like Roman Polanski, who's also a piece of crap. Uh, but like Hodorowski is one of the few where he like really. There's only two films that have been able to cross the line of separating the art from the artist, and where I can't stand it because like that rule has been broken, and it's Cannibal Holocaust and Cuties, if you remember Cuties.
I have not watched it yet, although I do know they're adding it to the Criterion collection. Is it?
Cuties?
Oh no, not. Which one is Cuties?
It's the really
I
controversial Netflix movie from a couple years ago. Like at the height of the pandemic, this French movie comes out, and it's basically sexualization of children.
okay. I was thinking of Daisies. No, I have not seen
Uh,
Cuties. I have not seen Cuties. That is that absolutely drives me nuts. The sexualization of like people who are they'll sexualize like people who are less than 10. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I could never watch Dance Moms for that very reason, or like with
Oh yeah, all those.
the kid beauty pageants.
r- Yeah, it's just strange to me, at least.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that Cannibal Holocaust for its animal abuse,
yeah.
and then El Topo is really close, but it's like barely keeps itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because like it's like sexual assault, basically.
Oh, okay. I did
Yeah,
not. I did not know that about El Topo.
yeah.
I think the only thing I knew about that film was that it's generally like one of the more accessible Hodorowski films.
Oh no, it's not.
Oh, really?
It definitely is not. No, it's like one of his least. I think out of all the four that I've watched, it's his least accessible.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's
Uh,
one of his more famous because the Beatles had shouted it out, and then John Lennon had given Hodorowski a budget to make the Holy Mountain.
okay. Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I did not know about the controversy surrounding El Topo. I'm gonna have to look into that after this episode. But I didn't even know because Hodorowski is very. I mean, he's held in such high regard, but obviously it's controversy is prevalent with a lot of the bigger name directors in Hollywood, like you said. You know, some of the biggest
Yeah.
names have some pitfalls that have definitely stained a otherwise tremendous career. But not David
Yeah.
Lynch.
Nope, not David Lynch. He's a
Hopefully.
legend.
Hopefully nothing comes out.
He did. I will say he did get controversy for Blue Velvet. Famously, Roger Ebert commented on. He accused David Lynch of uh, like humiliating his actresses, like particularly Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet. But that that like that controversy has been like washed because Rossellini came out and she said, "I'm okay. It's nothing's wrong is happening. We're just in an intense movie."
Yeah. Well, any final thoughts on Inland Empire and any final thoughts on David Lynch as a whole?
No, you could definitely see why I had nothing to talk about because we talked about more of like David Lynch as a director for this final part than we did actually talk about Inland Empire.
I will say,
Uh,
for how intimidating it is, both in length and how absurd the plot gets, it is definitely, I would say it's definitely worth a watch, though.
yeah, definitely. Um, it's one of my lesser favorite David Lynch films, but it is about two legs. It's got about two legs up against Dune, which is definitely like the little sore thumb in his career, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is frequently what I hear. Do you still think it is worth a watch though? Because there is a, I guess, morbid curiosity of me wanting to watch it, especially after watching
Oh,
the newest adaptation.
absolutely. I think you should definitely check out Dune because I think it's because like I watched it and I said this doesn't work, but it took me a while to realize why it doesn't work.
Mm,
And I don't want to spoil why I think it doesn't work, but because I like when people think and I like when people like have discussions. So I'd like to have a discussion with you about Dune, maybe later down
absolutely.
the line,
Yeah,
like if you decide to watch it.
that would be a great one to watch. And I kind of think that ties into very well kind of the inspiration that you had for our next video idea. And would you like to kind of give an explanation or, you know, unveil what we are going to try to make our next episode based on?
Yeah, sure. So the French Extremity movement is a movement of French cinema that existed between like 2002 and now the present day. I feel like we're still going through French Extremity, but during the height of French Extremity, I feel uh, there was a film that was considerably talked about as not the scariest, but one of the most disturbing films ever made, called Martyrs. It is a film that people seem to really thoroughly like, um, and I feel like in a way it could be polarizing, and I don't like the film. So I
Mm.
feel like that would be an interesting topic, but also back to back, I also watched recently the new A24 film, Bodies, 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 and people seem to like that as well. And I also don't like it. So I thought maybe it was an inspiration to talk about polarizing modern horror. Uh, and yeah, I guess that's the entire story of this.
This episode idea. Uh,
Mm.
I have watched Martyrs. It is one of the it's such a tough film to watch. There's certain scenes that feel like they take an eternity because they really do linger on some of the most brutal. And it
Yeah.
was a film that
Uh,
I rated positively, but I can't say I enjoyed.
yeah. I want to say that I don't want to get into it too much, but I what I will say is that my problems with the film go beyond the gross out stuff, like the
Mm.
because I like that type of gore because I like being affected that way, but the way Martyrs goes about it, I think, is not good at all, in my opinion. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
I'm excited to talk about that one. And Martyrs is such a, yeah, very polarizing, great discussion fodder for sure, because I think everyone who's it's such I'm trying to look at it gets very sensationalized. That movie has such a reputation behind it.
Yeah,
So can't wait to talk about that. And then Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. All I know about that, and that is, it's the new film. All I know is that Pete Davidson is in it.
yeah. Would recommend going in blind.
Okay.
For me, it's polarizing in a completely different way from Martyrs.
Okay.
But again, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Well, I can't wait for that episode. Very excited, and hopefully, you, the viewers, are very excited for it as well. Definitely drop some comments down below because I'm sure if you're watching this, you're a big David Lynch fan. We would love
Yeah.
to hear
We
your interpretations for sure.
Oh wait, do we do rating on Inland
Oh,
Empire?
yes. What was your rating on Inland Empire, and any final thoughts?
I think the movie is super strong in some parts and weaker in others. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. It's pretty good.
I also gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I think Eraserhead edges is out for me, and then also obviously Mulholland Drive. I liked more. There's a
Yeah,
lot of stuff that it goes for that I think it does very very well. Great performance by Laura Dern. Kind of a tour de force, honestly, in everything she's able to do. That was
yeah,
extremely impressive.
yeah. In terms of my David Lynch ranking, I would say um, it would out of the 10 movies, I'd say it would take ninth place for me. So it's a major step up above Dune,
Mhm.
but every other film of his I found better. So
That, at least from my perspective, is that is a good thing for sure to hear that, like, everything is only gonna be up from here, because it is a very solid film. Obviously, like, a 3.5, something I enjoy, think is very good. So and I got to watch Blue Velvet, and I will be sure to bring that up on any episode we do in the future after I watch, because I know,
absolutely.
yeah, how big of a fan you are. And y'all, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Ethan, thank you so much, sir, for joining me today to talk about one of the giants of the cinema landscape, a man and a beast all his own, David
Yes,
Lynch.
sir. Of course. My pleasure.
And we were happy to do this video for you. Be sure to check out Ethan's channel to hear more analysis from him. Chinatown is what he is doing a deep dive on currently. Be sure to watch the intro and be on the lookout. While you're watching this, part 2 might be out, but if not,
Yes.
be on the lookout for it. Very great videos. You guys got to check it out. Also, his short films. And we always appreciate you stopping here to check out these videos. And we will catch you on the Flippity Floop. Bye, y'all.
Yeah.